was 1951, and a newly formed communist China had taken control of Tibet, enforcing its claim by sending troops to the region. Mao Zedong's government promised Tibetans autonomy under Chinese rule, but Tibetans felt China did not deliver on its promise. So in March 1959, ethnic Tibetans took to the streets in an uprising against Chinese rule, a move crushed by Chinese troops. As a result, the Dalai Lama and thousands of Tibetans fled their homes and crossed the Himalayas to seek refuge in India, where the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government in exile reside today. This would be the beginning of decades of tensions between Tibetans and the Chinese government. The end of the 1980s saw 2 years of sometimes violent unrest in and around Tibet as monks, nuns, and lay people staged protests. It was an outcry against what they say was Chinese suppression of Tibetan culture and worship. There was also anger about the influx of Han Chinese in Tibet, who Tibetans say were taking the best jobs. Most recently, in March 2008, Tibetan monks took to the streets once again to voice their discontent with Chinese rule. A number of people were reportedly killed and injured during the clashes. Today, the Chinese flag flies over Potala Palace, once the home of the current Dalai Lama, signifying the prevailing communist leadership. Beijing continues to refute claims that Chinese rule is damaging the region. Rather, authorities insist their presence has brought economic growth and prosperity to the Tibetan people.
Why go to Tibet? Visas and permits are difficult to obtain. Police and military checkpoints are always nearby. But we decided it was important to go in spite of possible problems. We read what the Dalai Lama said about travel to Tibet. He said, "I welcome open-minded people to discover the reality of Tibet for themselves." And this video is the reality that we witnessed. Tibet is huge. It's the size of Alaska and Texas combined. The average altitude of the entire Tibetan Plateau is almost 15,000 feet. Because of its Himalayan mountains and tens of thousands of glaciers, its headwaters provide drinking water to half of the world's population. We went through our first checkpoint soon after landing at the Lhasa airport. Our guides warned us to be utterly discreet about two things: never take photos of police or military, and never mention the words Dalai Lama. The 13 stories of the Potala Palace tower over Lhasa. The most sacred monastery is the Jokang Temple. Every day, thousands of people visit and walk around the temple. Many prostrate themselves. The Sera Monastery is known for debating the meaning of Buddhist scriptures. Braille Without Borders is one of the few NGOs allowed to function in Tibet. It serves blind children with school and job training. At Samye Monastery, several local people showed us the traditional dances. No breakfast was complete without yak butter tea and barley flour porridge. We toured rural Tibet, visiting towns and monasteries. We had to buy 3 cans of oxygen due to intense altitude sickness. The daily wheezing allowed us to understand just how difficult it is to grow food and raise animals on the high plateau. The land is so Spartan that nomads still move their animals according to the weather and plant life. As we learned a few Tibetan phrases and lost our fear of the checkpoints, we met dozens of Tibetans. They taught us about their food. They told us that the Dalai Lama was utterly banned, but they knew he was everywhere they looked. We celebrated birthdays and taught English. We brought soccer balls and school supplies to kids in several villages, as well as to some monasteries. Feeling fearless was a turning point. We saw how Tibetans have survived the enormous pressure of military occupation. They have guarded their language and culture and optimism because they choose to live independently. Tibetans refer to the Chinese as tourists, even though legally they too are Chinese. Tibetans are proud of their connection to their beautiful land. They have a deep connection to Buddhism that cannot be reduced to facile explanations. Certainly, Tibet is no Shangri-La, and most literature in the West does Tibet an injustice. We saw pride in Tibetan culture. We saw that Tibetans were fearless in their embrace of their land, their farms, and their culture. In spite of the Chinese in-migration and pressure, Tibetans are utterly determined to teach their children the ways of the Plateau and the ways of their ancestors. We should abandon the myths of Nirvana and Shangri-La. Instead, we should embrace the Tibetans as they are, proud, independent, determined. When we buy Chinese or establish ties with the Chinese government, we should think about what the effect will be on the Tibetans.
This is the friendly one. Hi. Hello. You're my special friend. You're so cute. Hi.